This is Today as It Happened. Good Friday evening to you. I'm Joe St. George here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day, from day 3 of the federal government shutdown to the sentencing of music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. So let's jump right in. Police in England say an officer shot one of 2 men killed in a terrorist attack on a Manchester synagogue. The attack happened Thursday as worshippers gathered for Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Police say the attacker rammed a car into pedestrians, then attacked them with a knife before officers shot him dead. The victims were trying to prevent the attacker from entering the building when they were caught in police gunfire. Police say the attacker was a 35-year-old British man of Syrian descent. The Supreme Court will consider overturning a Hawaii law that strictly regulates where people can carry guns. The Trump administration urged the justices to take up the case, arguing the law violates Second Amendment rights. Hawaii's law bans guns on private property unless the owner allows them, and it also prohibits firearms in beaches, parks, bars, and restaurants that serve alcohol. The case stems from the court's 2022 ruling that found people have a right to carry firearms in public. The founder of a Texas megachurch pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a child in the 1980s. Robert Preston Morris admitted to 5 counts of lewd and indecent acts with a child. The 64-year-old former Gateway Church pastor will serve 6 months in jail as part of a plea deal. The abuse began when the victim was 12 years old and continued for 4 years. Morris resigned from the Dallas area megachurch last year after the allegations surfaced. Apple has removed an app that lets users report sightings of immigration agents. The move comes as the Trump administration steps up enforcement regarding immigration, as well as increasing surprise raids. The ICE Block app used crowdsourcing to flag ICE officer locations. It had more than 1 million users. Apple says it removed the app after receiving information from law enforcement about safety risks. Attorney General Pam Bondi previously warned the app's developer that tracking law enforcement is not protected free speech.
The United Nations is making clear that one of the wars President Trump says he helped bring to an end is now flaring back up. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, rebels backed by neighboring Rwanda are expanding their territory now, creating a humanitarian catastrophe. And Scripps News international correspondent Jason Bellini actually sat down for an exclusive interview with the DRC's president on the sidelines of the recent United Nations General Assembly meeting. So Jason, let's talk about why now and why is the Trump administration focusing on the Congo?
Marisa, it's strategic. The U.S. sees the Congo as central to energy and security for the United States, and the Trump administration, they want to be at the table as those resources have a way of shaping the future.
The future of the Democratic Republic of Congo may well chart the course for Africa's development. With the continent's largest reserves of cobalt, the metal essential to batteries that power phones, cars, and the electric grid, the DRC is poised to fuel Africa's rise in the global economy.
Your Excellency, thank you very much.
We sat down for an exclusive one-on-one interview with DRC President Felix Tshisekedi.
Your country owns 70% of the world's known cobalt reserves. We know that President Trump is interested in those minerals. What would be a deal that ultimately is acceptable to you?
Forcément, nous pensons que, puisque les États-Unis, avec le président Trump en tête, s'intéressent à ces minerais stratégiques, leur premier réflexe sera évidemment de garantir la sécurité de ces investissements.
Security threatened by an ongoing war between the DRC and Rwanda. Eastern Congo is in turmoil, with a rebel group called M23, backed by Rwanda, continuing an offensive to seize mineral-rich territory,
Cette Assemblée,
leading to a plea to the world.
nous demandons que les Nations Unies instaurent un régime de sanctions ciblées contre les auteurs des crimes économiques, mais aussi des crimes de guerre, crimes contre l'humanité et crimes de génocide commis à l'est de mon pays, les génocidaires.
Our interview, just months after President Donald Trump brought both sides to Washington this summer, Congo and Rwanda's foreign ministers shaking hands, a peace deal Trump continues to tout this week.
They've been fighting for 31 years, 10 million people dead. I got that one done.
But the fighting continues. Critical deadlines for the peace process missed.
What is the real situation on the ground right now? We are hearing reports of an offensive by M23. Trump says that he's ended this war. Is it over?
Pratique, la guerre n'est pas terminée. Elle a simplement changé de forme.
Is this peace deal dead at this point?
Non, non.
What he means, Rwanda, despite the deal it signed, continues to fight in the Congo through its proxy, the M23 rebels, whom the DRC president accuses of stealing his country's cobalt and selling it to buy weapons.
Justement, c'est l'accord de paix avec le Rwanda a un avantage, c'est celui lié les mains du Rwanda à cet accord. Donc,
he's saying Rwanda is now breaking its word to President Trump.
They said it was impossible to settle.
Tshisekedi's country is one with a tragic history of being exploited for its resources. That's why he seeks a bargain with the U.S., security and development assistance in exchange for access to its precious metals.
simplement servir de terre d'extraction, mais on sera aussi une terre de transformation.
The context here is rising tension between the United States and China. Both countries are interested in these mineral resources. Do you think you can get a better deal from the United States?
Non, non. En fait, nous n'avons pas de préférence. Nous sommes les amis de tout le monde.
Unlike past leaders, Tshisekedi has tried to toughen Congo's terms with China, reworking a mining deal many said gave Beijing too much.
J'ai dû revoir certains accords passés avec eux parce que c'était pas du win-win.
And that's why Washington wants to seize the moment, Maritza, to secure a non-Chinese supply of these highly valuable minerals.
Yeah, and I want to ask you also, Jason, something that makes my ears perk up when we talk about things, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. But last month, we had reports emerge about a new Ebola outbreak in the DRC. So what do we know about that?
That's right. This is the first one in the region in 18 years. And the casualty rate from this disease, 60%.
Wow.
And more than 30 people have died. The problem is that this is a remote region in south central Congo, and it's very difficult to reach. It's hard to get resources in there. And then you add on top of that U.S. funding cuts to USAID, and you have the World Health Organization saying that they need millions of dollars to be able to get the protective equipment they need to treat people. There's only one hospital, and it's overflowing with patients right now. It's a real problem, and we don't know the solution. But the deep concern, of course, is that this spreads. Highly contagious disease we're talking about.
Highly contagious and highly deadly, and important to remember, these are humans. These are people being impacted really dramatically. All right, Scripps News International correspondent Jason Bellini, thank you so much. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. military struck a small boat off the coast of Venezuela today. Hegseth posted on social media that intelligence confirmed the vessel was trafficking narcotics and the people on board were narco-terrorists. Those are his words. This is the fourth such strike that Hegseth has ordered now, and this attack comes less than a day after President Trump declared drug cartels to be unlawful combatants. Trump also declared the United States is now in an armed conflict with the cartels. That's according to a memo obtained by the Associated Press.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
I have such uncomplicated feelings of joy about it.
Yeah.
I do not feel any twisty, tortured way about it, which is not how I felt about the last album.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories.
The album is out, and I have such uncomplicated feelings of joy about it.
Yeah.
I do not feel any twisty, tortured way about it, which is not how I felt about the last album, because there was such a lag time between, when you make music and then you put it out. There's oftentimes your life can make drastic changes in those times. With this album, my life is in exactly the same spot as when I wrote the record.
All right, released at midnight, Taylor Swift's The Life of a Showgirl Had already scored 5 million pre-saves on Spotify. And are you ready for it? The reviews are good. The New York Times critic writes, it's greeting her future with a glee that verges on the unbridled. NPR says it's expressing genuine affection and delight. People magazine calls it dazzling. So joining us now is People's executive editorial director, sorry about that, Melody Chu. Melody, I need to apologize to our viewers right now because I'm going to totally fangirl over Taylor Swift, but what do you think of the album?
It's infectious. I think it's everything she warned us it would be. It represents the joy that she's found in her life. And like she said, it's uncomplicated. Like, this is a departure from the tortured, stressful, complicated times of her life. And now she can just, hold on to this beautiful part and next chapter and dive headfirst into it.
Yeah, and I listened to it this morning, and I was walking around, and I'm in Washington, D.C., and it's sunny, it's sunny this morning, so it was already a good day for a good mood. But it definitely, it did evoke joy in me listening to it. And I thought it was interesting how, yes, she talks about the joy and being in love and really kind of finding her place, but not without mentioning some of the hard times she's already gone through, especially in the love department.
Totally. And she has always worn her heart on her sleeve. And what's different about the songwriting on this album is that she's found this simple kind of love that I think she always wanted, maybe thought was never going to find her, or vice versa. And now she's found this guy who just puts her on a pedestal, is happy to shout about her from the rooftops, and vice versa. I mean, look at this press tour she's on. She's happy to show off her ring and talk about how in love she is. Mm-hmm. And it's just very normal. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, I'm waiting for all the people who are still saying this is a publicity stunt to come out and talk about that, because it's hard to make this stuff up, especially when you hear some of the lyrics. I am a woman of the 80s, so I was very excited about seeing a George Michael song. What can you tell us about her use of George Michael in that song, father figure?
Yeah, it's very fitting, obviously, to tap the catalog of this icon. She reached out to his family. They, of course, were so excited and on board. And the song, she says, is about getting her master's back. And, the complicated journey she's been on there, and now really having ownership of her work. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a huge moment. If you followed Taylor Swift at all in her story, that was such a huge moment for her and coinciding with the engagement to Travis Kelce. But let's talk about rolling out the album. It's so funny. I was on the phone with a former news director who is in his 70s, and he was looking at his calendar, and he said, well, today's the Taylor Swift launch day. On Monday, I have to watch Jimmy Fallon because she's on Jimmy Fallon. I mean, people are following along, but there's a big rollout. So let's talk about the events and interviews she's doing.
Yeah, we've seen her go underground a lot for her past albums. And I think, again, this is just a reflection of her joy and current state of mind. She's happy to talk about where she is in life. She doesn't have to talk about getting her heart broken and all of those difficult times she's been through, because she's leading into this joyful era, if you will. And she wants to talk about it, which is lovely for fans.
Yeah, and it seems like it's like she said in that interview, she's not in a different place now with this coming out than she was when she wrote it, and so she just gets to live in that authentic joy. Well, we want to thank you. Any final thoughts on this, Melody?
I think it's an amazing new era for her. It's something that I think genuine fans have wanted to see for her. It's just a really happy time. So yeah, and thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Melody Chu from People magazine. Yeah, I'm already thinking about what the concert's going to look like. Thank you for being with us.
This is Today As It Happened. We'll be right back. You're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News' rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day. Let's jump right in.
The Trump administration is withholding $2.1 billion for Chicago infrastructure projects. That money was supposed to go to extend the city's Red Line train, but federal officials say they put it on hold to, quote, ensure funding is not flowing via race-based contracting. Earlier this week, President Trump froze $18 billion designated for infrastructure projects in New York. Crews are still on the scene of a huge fire, which ignited at a Chevron oil refinery outside Los Angeles last night. The towering flames were visible for miles. Now, officials urged people to stay indoors, but they did not issue evacuation orders, at least not yet. The fire is now contained, and we're told nobody was injured. All personnel are accounted for. And the government shutdown, keeping Americans in the dark about the job market. The Labor Department didn't release its crucial monthly jobs report today. It's actually the first time the report has been delayed since 2013. The timing particularly bad because hiring has nearly ground to a halt. Private data firm payroll processor ADP shows the economy actually lost 32,000 jobs last month. Construction, manufacturing, and financial services all cut workers. Now, the White House blames Senate Democrats for the shutdown, while Democrats point fingers at the Trump administration.
3 people injured in Sunday's attack remain hospitalized here at Henry Ford Genesis Hospital, but they're no longer critical. We're told their conditions have improved. We had a chance to speak with some of the medical staff who saved them.
My resident was actually in the church. And the resident said there's an active shooter in our church.
Emergency room Dr. Alan Jansen says that call from a resident physician at the Grand Blanc Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints service came in before EMS made it to the church. About 15 minutes later, he said it was all hands on deck at Henry Ford Genesis Hospital.
As I walked into the emergency room, all these patients just started rolling through the door, one after the other. With wounds that you just never see in Grand Blanc, Michigan.
Several medical staff attend the church with family members among the injured, including the youngest patient. Dr. Sanford Ross treated that 6-year-old boy whose father is a resident physician at the hospital. He was shot in the arm.
He didn't shed one tear. He walked in the emergency department stoic. Mom was a wreck, which as a parent, I completely understand. We always are invested in any of the patients that come in. But when you spend day after day with that person and then they come in as a trauma, or their family does, I think it hits you just a little different.
Especially when we train these residents, we spend a lot of time with them and they're part of our extended family. And to see them go through this and their families go through this is just heartbreaking. And I've told a lot of people, words cannot describe the feeling. We really shouldn't have to go through this in any community.
Sadly, one of their 8 patients died. In their efforts to save lives on that fateful day, the doctors said having a unified team made the difference.
Recruitment happened very fast.
Everyone from EMS to the fire department to your police to your registration to all your techs in the department and your nurses. And we had some outstanding nurses that day especially. It's just the entire thing, the entire group has to work as one to be successful. And I couldn't be prouder of our community and our hospital in making that happen that day.
In other news, we are following today on this Friday, an 8th home in North Carolina's Outer Banks fell into the Atlantic Ocean.
There's a big one. Oh, there it goes. We're going down. Here we go.
The Atlantic continues its assault on the Buxton oceanfront, with waves still battering the homes that are still standing.
I've lived here for going on 26 years, and I never would have thought in a million years that Buxton would be in the shape that it's in right now.
The heartbreaking scene stretches along our shoreline, with each wave dragging pieces out to sea before slamming them back onto what used to be our neighbors' front yards. This is the reality in Buxton after Tuesday's collapses continued overnight into Wednesday, leaving residents watching and wondering which house will be next.
My personal thoughts are that Buxton needs to be declared a state of emergency, and we need to get our federal government involved to lift our hardened structures ban.
Dare County leaders walked through the devastation Wednesday morning, seeing it all firsthand.
Seeing these houses fall in Buxton is just devastating. It's hard to watch, but the county's committed to doing what we can.
There is hope on the horizon, Beach nourishment and jetty repairs are scheduled for the area in 2026. But that feels like a lifetime away when homes are falling into the ocean this week.
We're moving just as quickly as we can to get some sand out here, to get a beach out here, to get a groin down here to hold the sand, to do the things we've got to do to preserve the beach and maybe continue Buxton in the future. And hopefully this won't happen again.
While our community waits, there's a shared hope that our federal representatives and elected leaders will finally understand. Buxton can't wait any longer.
We sit way off the coast, and yes, we're on a sandbar, but there's been people here for generations and generations and generations. And, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. We just have to get rid of some of the red tape that prevents us from getting done what we need to do.
Will Thomas, Scripps News Group.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
It's day 3 of the Trump Republican government shutdown and day 257 of the chaos that Donald Trump has been inflicting on the American people.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Joe St. George here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
On this vote, the yeas are 54 and the nays are 44. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion upon reconsideration is not agreed to.
All right, there you have it. The Senate's fourth attempt to pass a short-term funding measure fails, which means this shutdown will carry on through the weekend. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers won't know when they will get paid again. Some are forced to work without pay. Others are worried about their furloughs that could turn into layoffs. That's certainly something that the president has been threatening. So for more on the latest with this shutdown, we're going to head over to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's where our Scripps News White House correspondent Jacob Garden-Swartz is live for us. Jacob, I know we've been talking, we've been watching pictures of the Senate, looking for any kind of hint of movement or bipartisan cooperation. Doesn't look like we had any change. So tell us about the latest news concerning where we're at and the timeline, because I'm hearing there's some movement on when lawmakers might return next week.
Yeah, Maritza, some movement, but not necessarily in the direction you want if the goal is to reopen the government. Just a few moments ago, we have learned that Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican Speaker for the House, has opted not to have lawmakers return to Washington next week, as was previously planned, designating next week as a district work period, essentially enabling lawmakers to remain in their home states and continue constituent work there. That has a number of different implications. Obviously, from the shutdown fight, that makes matters a little bit more difficult for Democrats. Republicans say in the House they have already passed this clean continuing resolution, this measure to extend government appropriations temporarily, and that the ball is in the Senate's court. Of course, Democrats in the Senate are not interested in the plan that Republicans have passed and are pushing forward with their own plan, regardless, unless the Democrats in the Senate and the Senate more broadly votes to approve the Republican plan that already passed the House. It will have to get voted on again. Remember, any measure has to be voted on by both parties. And so if there is some sort of new compromise, new funding package that is passed in the Senate, the House is going to have to vote on it. Well, that can't happen if lawmakers are not here in Washington. So that is certainly one, a tangible impact of this. There is another behind-the-scenes impact, though, and that concerns the margins in the House, and specifically a Congresswoman-elect, Arizona's Adelita Grijalva, who won sizably in a solidly Democratic district a short time ago. She has been waiting to be sworn in to the Democratic caucus in the House, but that cannot happen until lawmakers are back and the House is in full session. So she will continue to be waiting, as far as we understand, until Speaker Johnson chooses to put the House back in session. And not only, of course, will this help Democrats with their margins, give them one more vote for the pieces of legislation that they support, she was also widely expected to be the 218th vote on a discharge petition. And now we're getting, again, into some of these nitty-gritty legalese of how Congress operates. But this is a specific type of congressional mechanism that requires a vote on specific pieces of legislation. Specifically, this is calling for a vote to mandate the release of Epstein's files and other documents that the Trump administration has in its possession concerning the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Republican leaders have thus far refused to put forward that measure for a vote. So instead, Republicans and Democrats together have worked on what's known as this discharge petition, enabling lawmakers of both parties to sign on, saying essentially, I support this legislation, bring it to the floor. Once that reaches that critical 218th signing statement, then that will get a vote on the House floor. But of course, that cannot happen until this Congresswoman-elect is allowed to be sworn in. So not just impacts for the government shutdown, but also potentially for the future of transparency regarding the Epstein files. Maritza.
Yeah, and Jacob, I'm glad you brought that up because it's certainly a question that I am seeing a lot of critics bring about here, especially on social media. Why aren't they swearing her in as so many more people keep calling for the release of those Epstein files? Scripps News White House producer and reporter Jacob Gardenswartz, making us smarter, one live hit at a time, live from the North Lawn. Thank you so much, Jacob. And as we head into the weekend, we want to kind of spell out for you how this shutdown might affect your weekend plans and your life. So if you're headed to a national park, please see if the bathrooms will be open. That's a pretty important step. Actually, though, you might want to see if the park is even open at all. If it is, take a look. You might need to figure out if some parts of it might be closed. Like you might not be able to camp. The campgrounds might be closed. If you are in Washington, D.C., and you want to go to the National Zoo or the Smithsonian museums this weekend, well, they do have funds to stay open until Monday, they say, but after that, you'll probably be out of luck. You'll have to wait to see the pandas another time. If you are traveling by air, make sure you check your wait times. Don't just glide into the airport with an hour to go. Be ready for delays and headaches. That's because TSA and air traffic operators are required to work, but without pay. And if we judge things based on other shutdowns and how everything went, we can expect some of those workers to call out. They might be short-staffed. The Department of Veterans Affairs said benefits regional offices will be closed during the shutdown. Some death benefits like headstone placements, ground maintenance, that will not happen. And if you are a veteran and you need to call the hotline or chat online, that will also not be available. Benefits like compensations, though, pensions, education and housing will continue. So here's another impact of the shutdown that a lot of us didn't even think about, but one person did, and that is our national correspondent, Maura Barrett. The first Friday of the month is usually a big one for gauging the labor market. That's when the government typically releases data on how many jobs were added to the economy the previous month. It didn't happen today because of the government shutdown, and as I said, Scripps News business and technology correspondent Maura Barrett has been tracking this and warning about that this week. So Maura, why does it matter that that data is delayed?
Economists look forward to every month. This first Friday of the month, very exciting. They love to pour over that jobs data that keeps track of what employment looks like across the country. It's a key indicator for the state of the economy. But they said even for the non-economists, if you don't care about pouring through those numbers or looking at the broader economy, the numbers are important for the average American because it helps you understand how you should be thinking about your finances. For those who follow the economy closely, like Mark Hamrick, the first Friday of the month is typically spent looking over new jobs data.
A typical jobs report Friday is often the most consequential day of the month for those of us monitoring the economy because the job market is so important.
Because of a government shutdown, this Friday was different. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, which releases the monthly labor data, is closed.
Lacking this data, we're having to sort of walk with blinders on for every stakeholder in the U.S. economy, which is just about everybody.
That includes the Federal Reserve, which relies on government economic data when it makes its interest rate decision, says economics professor Abby Hall.
This makes it much more difficult for them to assess and do their jobs.
There are private companies that release jobs data. That includes payroll processor ADP and HR data tracker Revelio Labs, but each gets their data differently and provides different estimates. Lujaina Abduahed is a senior economist at Revelio Labs.
Of course, we're going to get different answers. I personally don't think that anyone can 100% replace the BLS.
For September, Revelio Labs reported the U.S. added 60,000 total jobs, while ADP reported private sector jobs dropped by 32,000. The difference shows the need for more in-depth government data, says Hamrick.
The data we get from the Labor Department on the job market is the gold standard. And so lacking that, we don't have an important piece of the puzzle trying to understand what is happening with the broader economy and the job market.
And Maritza, it's not just the jobs data that could be impacted. If the shutdown does drag on, it could also delay monthly inflation data. And that's another key data point that the Fed looks at, which we know then can determine whether or not they're going to cut those interest rates we've been following.
Okay, so Maura, if we look at our history books here and the last government shutdown almost 7 years ago, any sort of precedent for this kind of data being withheld?
There is, but it's been a long time, over a decade. As you mentioned, during the more recent shutdown back in 2018, the Bureau of Labor Statistics was able to release its monthly jobs report on time because during that shutdown, the agency wasn't directly impacted by a lack of government funding. But back in 2013, a shutdown did delay the jobs report by a few weeks. So we'll have to see what this looks like by this time next month. Now, economists told us that the timing of this shutdown is even more opportune because there's already a lot of other questions about the labor market, about the economy in general, Maritza.
All right, Scripps News business and technology correspondent Maura Barrett. Thanks so much, Maura.
And we'll be right back with more of today's top stories on Today As It Happened. Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Jose George. Let's jump right back into our rundown of our top stories of the day.
All right, we have breaking news right now. Sean Diddy Combs' sentence is in, not what his team was hoping for. He will be in prison for 50 months, 4 years and 2 months. Let's get right to Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller, who's live in New York, who is in the courtroom. Alex, what did the judge say?
Well, Maritza, he will be sentenced, as you said, to 50 months. He's already been in prison for 13 months, so he will get credit for time served there, and then he will have 5 years of probation. The judge was not convinced by Combs or his team's argument that he was a changed man. And he pointed to one instance very specifically, the fact that after Combs already knew he was under investigation, after the fact that that now infamous hotel video was released, after the fact that he apologized for it on Instagram, he still continued the similar actions with Jane, that he still made her take drugs, forced her to have freak-offs, choked her and beat her. He said that was the evidence to him that he was not a changed man. There was one point where he said that Combs did this for 10 years and continued to do it because he had the power, the control, and the resources to be able to do it. And most importantly, the judge said he did it because he had not been caught yet. And that is why he is sentencing him to such a substantial sentence. Now, this is within the sentencing guidelines that we got from the probation officials, who suggested between 60 and 70 months. And this is actually a little bit lower than that. And of course, again, he gets credit for time served there. The government had asked for 135 months, which is more than 11 years. He said that is more than necessary. But the term that his team was asking for, Combs's team, they were just asking for 14 months, which is effectively time served. He said that's not enough either. He made a very specific point to say that that would not send a message to domestic violence abusers. He said he wants that exploitation against people to know that the exploitation of violence against women will be taken seriously and that there will be meaningful accountability. So there is a deterrence factor to this. He talked about the intimate relationship that Combs had with his victims. He said, you weren't just the John, you were more than that. And that is at the heart of this. His team had said he's not a pimp, he's not a John. And according to the judge, he believed that in fact he was. Now, Again, he was acquitted on the most serious charges, RICO and sex trafficking. But the judge, Maritza, was able to consider that background as part of the sentence, and he said that he did do that when he was determining this sentence.
And Alex, I'm wondering, what did Diddy say?
Well, he spoke very briefly, but very emotionally. By the way, when that sentence was delivered, he had no reaction. His hands were clasped. He was looking down. He didn't so much as move a single muscle as the judge handed down that sentence. Now, that was different than when he got up to speak. He stood and faced the judge for the majority of it. He apologized individually to Cassie, to Cassie's family, to Jane for his actions, and then he turned around and faced each one of his children and apologized, named them each, and apologized to them individually and to his mother. And it's when he spoke to his mother that his voice began to crack, and he did cry a little bit at this point. But he said that he had lost his way, that his ego got the best of him, that his drug addiction got the best of him. And he said to his children, "I am so sorry, you deserve better." He says, "I'm not a bad person, I just got lost. People can change, and I know I can change." He did say, though, that he knows his actions were disgusting, shameful, sick. He says, "I was sick from the drugs. I was out of control and needed to get help, but I didn't get it, and so I make no excuse because I knew better and his mother taught him better," he said. So this is the first time we've really seen him take full accountability. He did not apologize in any point leading up to this. He effectively kind of pushed it off in some ways. And so this is really the first time we have seen him say, "I am sorry for what I did." He had asked the judge for a chance to be a father again, a son again. Obviously, he has 7 children, one of which is only 2 years old. But the judge saying that he needed to impose this sentence to make sure that Sean Combs doesn't do this again, because he said he believes he might, and that other domestic violence abusers know that if they do this, if they continue to do it, that they will be caught and that they will face a harsh sentence.
Alex, earlier you talked about how it was reported that his team had already scheduled speaking engagements for him next week. And I'm wondering, you talk about him not moving a muscle when it was read. What did the rest of the people around him, his kids, how did they respond? There wasn't
very much reaction. Yeah, there wasn't very much reaction that I saw, and they really tried to hone in on that speaking engagement. It's really interesting. When his team got up to talk about it, they said it's not a speaking engagement, it's a teaching engagement. And they talked about how he's going to speak to the Bureau of prisons around the country and talk about his own experiences. And that's why he needed to get out, because he was there to be a model for all of these people. They even had someone who leads a recidivism program get up and spoke for about 10 minutes about that. So they were really trying to say that he was a healed man, that he was going to change, and his children did the same, by the way, when they got up and spoke. They said they believed their dad had changed. They say they could hear it in his voice. But again, the judge did not agree with that very clearly.
All right, Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live in New York.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Hamas says it is accepting parts of President Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan. Now, Hamas says it will release all Israeli prisoners, dead and alive, if field conditions are met. And so we will continue to monitor that for updates and more information and clarity on that situation.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News' debrief of our top stories of the day. Let's jump right back in.
We have some breaking news. Hamas says it is accepting parts of President Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan. This after President Trump set a deadline for this Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for them to agree to this deal. Let's get right to Scripps News White House correspondent Jacob Garden-Swartz. Jacob, what more can you tell us about Hamas accepting part of this plan? Can you provide some clarity on which parts they don't accept?
Yeah, Maritza. Well, this just breaking at this moment, and as far as we understand, White House officials also reading through it and coming up with their response. But as you indicated, Hamas officials in an official statement confirming that they are in agreement with some portions of that 20-point plan President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu laid out earlier this week towards a long-term peace solution in Gaza. Hamas officials writing, quote, "The movement announces its approval to release all occupation prisoners, alive and dead bodies. According to the exchange formula mentioned in President Trump's proposal, the movement confirms its readiness to immediately enter negotiations through mediators to discuss the details." That's the acceptance. Now on to the but. As for the other issues mentioned in President Trump's proposal related to the future of the Gaza Strip and the authentic rights of the Palestinian people, these are linked to a comprehensive national position based on relevant international laws and resolutions and will be discussed through a comprehensive Palestinian national framework in which Hamas will participate and contribute responsibly. So certainly some carefully worded responses there. No doubt positive news that an agreement on the most immediate and pressing needs, the return of the hostages, both live and dead, as well as the cessation of hostilities within Gaza's borders. But the question, the but part of the statement is really what comes next. What is the future of Gaza look like? The president's proposal leaving open the possibility of some sort of two-state solution, suggesting that the Gazan people might be able to govern themselves, provided that Palestinian Authority leadership engage in requisite reforms. That's something that even when the president announced this proposal, Prime Minister Netanyahu seemed to push back on slightly. Again, we have not had any official response from the White House to this yet, but we did see the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, put out a photo of the president, what appeared to be taping some sort of video message in response, and she described this as Hamas's acceptance of the plan and how the president will be responding to it. So certainly reading between the lines, it appears that the White House is going to frame this as a win for the president. Again, still lots of remaining questions about where the specific sticking points are with regard to the future of Gaza. And just last thing I'll note on this that's notable is that the president's desire to frame this as a win does seem to be in contrast to some early reaction from Republicans in Congress, specifically Senator Lindsey Graham, who, after Hamas put out their statement, did not have the same view that the president did, that this was an acceptance, rather said that he viewed this as a rejection of President Trump's take it or leave it proposal. So again, really the one person that we're waiting for is the president. We do know that reporters were not called into the Oval Office with him for him to deliver his remarks on this news. So we're really just waiting for his Truth Social feed, most likely, to see how exactly he comes down. Maritza?
And I think the calendar date of October 3rd being today is notable here, just days before October 7th, the 2-year anniversary of the start of this.
Thank you for joining us this evening for Today As It Happened. I'm Joe St. George. Have a great Friday night and a great weekend.